My name's Dan Layton, and I'm part of Faithworks. And we learned about Jonathan and Barb from Bill Pino and Cindy Worley. Cindy was Jonathan's nurse for many years, knew Barb, and we understood that they were living in Roseville in really tough conditions, bed bugs. Jonathan was growing up handicapped and really couldn't even take a bath for like 5 to 6 years. They had to do a sponge bath on him. And we just thought that, how can someone, live like that? And, so we took it on as Faithworks to really bless Jonathan and Barb with this home. And it's really funny because I'm in the mobile home business, and I actually had a lawsuit with this company, the Mosheries. And it's funny how God restored that relationship and allowed this home to come about. And I would have never thought that, because listen, you have something legal like that, you just usually, stay away. But that's not how God wanted this to work. So we found the home. We bought it for around $5,000, which was completely unbelievable lower than it should have been sold for. And we restored it. We renovated it. We opened walls. We painted it. We had the ramp installed. People donated skirting. The underbelly of the whole home was donated. People heard of us from downriver, and they literally wanted to contribute. And one of them did the entire the shower, the walk-in shower, tiled the whole thing. And he wanted just to bless, Jonathan and Barb. And he came out all the way from downriver to do that. So it was remarkable. It was given. Matter of fact, the request was almost 1 year to the day that we gave the home away to Barb and Jonathan. We looked at that and it was just like, are you kidding me? We're almost to the exact day. But we all celebrated here. We love the whole story. We love Jonathan, and it really propelled Faithworks into taking on these manufactured homes, because this was the first large manufactured home that we actually did. And of course we've done 2 others so far. So I'm just amazed too that you see God's hands and how this was designed for Barb, and then Barb passed, and then Rudy was able to be blessed by this. So it's just funny, you think you have it for one, you see it one way, and God has something totally different in store. So there's more people, including all the nurses, who are being blessed, as you'll soon find out.
I became involved in Jonathan's life as of 2008. I've been his guardian for 12 years now. And with the help of Cindy Worley and her sister, Christine, I think I will be okay. I need all the help I can get, even though I do get help through the state, the county, But my main concern is Jonathan. Jonathan Sakali. With the help of the nurses, I'll be okay. He was born in December 3rd, 1995 at St. John's Hospital. He's got cerebral palsy. He can't walk. He can't talk. He's got the biggest smile. And that's Jonathan. Like I said, Marco, Jonathan is my life. He's someone that I guess it was meant to be. Yeah. With the help of Cindy Worley and Christine, they came in contact with Faithworks, and they are the ones that remodeled and did this trailer, this mobile home, the whole thing. We used to live, Barbara and Jonathan Cicada used to live in Roseville, and from there, Cindy and her sister got in touch with Faithworks, and they started working on the project. Took them about 2 years or so, but they did it.
Yeah, hi, my name is Jeffrey. I'm a registered nurse here in the state of Michigan, and I got introduced to Jonathan working through agency nursing to take care of him because of his special needs that he has back in 2015, and with them, I started taking care of him at his other residence, which he had in Roseville, that we had a 2-bedroom apartment. And it was a very confined and tight space for him based on his needs. He has his own special bed and requires a wheelchair and things like this to move around. So he has been very labile as far as his health goes, related to his medical conditions with his cerebral palsy and the need for having a ventilator. He has his own tracheostomy tube, his own feeding tube. And so as time went on, the organization Faithworks, along with his mother, they'd worked for like a couple of years to get the modular home here that they've gotten themselves into, and he got moved into here after a short period of time where he was in the hospital for about a month because of respiratory issues. And we got the place set up just after his 20th birthday. He was able to get moved into here, into the modular home, which they've done. Faithworks has done a marvelous amount of work on making it accessible for him to take care of his needs. Yes, he is able to respond more significantly with several of the nurses that have worked with us, that we've been able to get him to at least smile and at least say ah and say ma and things like this. So we've been working with the speech therapists and stuff like that. I don't think he would see that if you were in an institutional setting with them taking care of more than one patient.
I'm Jennifer. I'm a nurse. I work with Atrium Healthcare. At the time that I started working with Jonathan, I worked for Centria Healthcare. He was my first home health patient, and I was fortunate enough to get to take care of him, to be taking care of him on the day that he moved into this house. So I got to push him up the ramp, and we got to see Spider-Man, and it was awesome. Oh, it was just neat to see it all in progress, to see them, you know, painting the cabinets black like she wanted and fixing ceilings. And I know that the place was a real mess before they started, and just, they totally redid it. And it was also furnished. To have all that done and bring Barbara's worries down a ton, having a handicapped child, trying to take care of him, is difficult as it is, but in the apartment where there was problems with bed bugs and a lot of crime in the area and different things, it was so good to be here. Well, Jonathan loves Spider-Man, and there was a Spider-Man here the day that they moved into the house, and he was doing flips and cartwheels and all kinds of stuff. It was so neat. And also Jonathan's room is decorated like Spider-Man. They had an artist come in and graffiti the walls, and it was just so neat. So that's good. I just happen to work for a company now that Jonathan is with for home health. So the head nurse was able to get me here one day a week. So Thursdays are my favorite day. I love Jonathan, and so glad that Rudy's here taking care of him.
So I was a pediatric nurse for St. John Home Care, and Barbara came into our care as a new mom because she had been sick when she had Jonathan, and she came out of the hospital before him. And so when Jonathan was still in the hospital, Barb came home and needed to have IV therapy, and so I actually was the one taking care of her, and then when Jonathan came home, I took care of him as well. So.
And at that time, I had my own business, which I still do, as a beauty consultant with Mary Kay. So thinking it would pamper Barbara, Cindy brought her over for a facial. And I think Jonathan was with her.
He was.
Jonathan came to everything we did. And so we pampered her. And Barbara was my customer till she passed away. But she became a sister.
Yeah.
She became like a sister.
She called us her sisters.
She did.
So she didn't, and we sometimes acted like sisters.
Yeah, we kind of pushed her around a little bit. But I think things really came to the head for this because Barb went through a divorce and had to move. And one of her nurses was kind enough to go apartment shopping with her, but had a very different view than we did about what was an acceptable living situation. So the apartment was adequate, perhaps size-wise. It was barely, but it wasn't really well kept, and it didn't feel safe. And as time went on,
and yes, and Jonathan, it was a space that was so small, though, that Jonathan was never able to get into the bathroom to be washed up or anything. So he was, I mean, the nurses took great care of him, and Barb took great care of Jonathan. I mean, she was an awesome mom. He was not hospitalized. He never had skin breakdowns. She knew instinctively how to take care of her son. And
she even showed, so when he was hospitalized once, just before they moved here, the nurses came in and they were all trying to do something together to show the student nurses, and she very respectfully said, "Can I show you how I do it at home?" And she taught them all how to do it because she just was that, Jonathan was everything to her. And in his whole upbringing, even with the feeding tube, even with a trach and all those things, had never had an infection. I mean, his doctor couldn't say enough about Barb. But the place seemed like it got worse and worse.
it did.
And until we couldned stand it. We had to get her out of there.
Yeah.
We started talking about what can we do.
It was overridden with bugs.
It got,
Bed bugs.
at the end, there was a bed bug problem in that building. So, you know,
And they weren't doing
you
anything.
can't have somebody who's constantly lying in a bed and can't be moved and can't move. I mean, it was
situation.
terrible.
So Christine at one point said to me, "I just wish that I could somehow find a way to get Barb a better place to live." And then I was talking to a friend of mine who is a painter, a friend of ours actually. Christine knew him as well.
Steve Wenzel.
And Steve Wenzel said, "Why don't you try calling Faithworks and see?" And I said, "Do they do something like that?" And he said, "You don't know unless you ask." So I called and spoke with Bill Pinho, and within 24 hours he had talked to Barb and called us back and said, "I don't know what this is going to look like. We've never taken on something this big before."
And it was huge.
But we are going to tell you that we will help you figure this out. So that started the ball rolling, and over time they were looking at different options, and then
we even thought we found a different place that was half this size, but it seemed wonderful, and we lost it, and we were kind of devastated we lost that one. But then look what we ended up with.
Yeah, and it was not a double wide.
This is like this is so. The one problem Barb had when she came in here was she said it's so big. I can't stay here alone at night. It's too big.
Yes. So the ball really started rolling, and they opened doorways, and they, everything was down to the floorboards, and they changed the bathroom. That was 2 rooms, and they opened it up so that they could make the 2 rooms into the bathroom and the laundry room, so that Jonathan can actually go in and take a bath.
When they heard he hadn't had a shower in all the years he lived in that apartment, they really went overtime, and that is an incredible facility for him.
Yeah. Now we're just hoping
waiting for
the
perfect shower chair, so it's easier to just
chair and the lift. The lift is not working right now, but that'll happen. And so they made it for him. They really made it for him. And in the process of doing it for him, it was for Barb too.
Oh yeah, and Barb has her stamp all over this place. In her knickknacks and her collectibles. She got to pick the light fixtures and the appliances in the kitchen,
and then the night before we moved her in, she had not seen anything yet. The night before we moved her in, we realized that we didn't have a sofa in the living room, and we didn't have Jonathan's dresser. That was a big deal to Barb. And Christine happened to be here. I was caring for my mom, so she happened to be here, and they said, well, what do you think? And she said, well, it sure would be nice and look more homey if we could get a sofa, and then Barb really wants that dresser for Jonathan, and Bill just said, go
to Art Van.
go look for it, and let's just get
and
it.
Just call me with the price.
I mean, I don't know the exact amount, but I know that Dan found this, and he can tell you that story, but he found this for probably, I think, around $5,000 or $6,000, and then we raised 12, I think it was, because a friend offered to match the funds. She and her husband would match the funds up to
A certain
$4,000, I think it was. And so that really started the ball rolling. All of a sudden, everybody was excited. And so we got that. And then the Faithworks guys actually got money from the 100 Women Who Care. Mm-hmm. And they poured a lot of that money into it. And then we had more still. So Dan can tell you what went into this, but I'm sure it was close to $25,000, $27,000, $30,000. By the time
I don't think
finished.
they realized when they first, they were so excited to get this.
Yeah.
Then when they started working, I think, and Dan will tell you that story, I mean, they at one point opened up the floor when they realized we're going to have to replace all this, let's see what we can salvage. And he reached down and took a pipe, and it came off in his hand. I mean, they had to do all new plumbing, all new, the infrastructure of this had to be totally redone. And it was bigger than they expected. So getting that gift from the 100 Women Who Care was essential.
Huge. Yeah, it was huge. Well, once he found the place, it went, well, I don't think it was quite two.
The redo.
I think from the time we talked to Barb and he said he would help, it might have been a year and a half. But I think the redo was probably 6 months, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, they worked hard and fast.
I mean,
and at the same time, we were working.
Yes.
It took a small army of friends as well. I mean, I have pictures of us looking like
hazmat
Smurf
suits.
people. I have a friend. We have a friend who works for DuPont Paint, and had a couple extra of the factory suits, and then we had bought some online. So we had these. We covered ourselves completely to go in there because of the bed bugs, because it's very hard to kill them. Mm-hmm. And we used eucalyptus because they hated it. We taped everything, and we went in there and we had to completely clear out, and things had to be destroyed if they could not be clean, and then everything had to be either frozen or had to be killed by heat. So all of her laundry had to go through super hot dryer, then super hot water, then super hot heat, and it had to be industrial size. So you had to be careful about that because
you're taking
into somebody's business. Mm-hmm. So we had to be real cautious about that. And then all of her things that were kept, like her collectibles, had to go into a storage unit that went a whole winter through the deep freeze. So seeing us in our little Smurf outfits trying to clean out her apartment, because Barb was a collector. Mm-hmm. Barb.
Yes, you were.
There's no other way to say it.
She loves her knickknacks.
Right.
She didn't throw anything away.
Yeah.
And so that was hard for her, because sometimes she would say, not my so-and-so, and I'd say, if we can't clean it or freeze it, it has to go. Mm-hmm. And so she had to learn to be pretty patient with us on that one.
I think the other thing, too, we really talked about a village of people, and one of the Faithworks guys also knew a lawyer, because they were giving Barb grief about moving out of the apartment. They wanted her out of the apartment, but they claimed that she owed
an enormous amount for her. It would be an enormous amount for. Yeah, it was a water bill that was like almost $4,000.
Yeah, I mean, it was
like it was maybe for the whole building for, I don't know. Mm-hmm. It didn't make sense.
Yes, it didn't. And
Faithworks.
Yeah, and one of the guys at Faithworks knew a man who was a lawyer and talked to him, and he said, well, let me see. And he thought he was going to write a letter. And he ended up meeting us 5 times, probably he or one of his associates met us 5 times at the courthouse. And then he was the one the night before we finally said, they thought we would let it go and we would say we'd pay it, and we said, we're not going to do that. And they said, okay, well then it's going to go to court. And the night before court, or the day before court, he talked with them and basically said, you've met Barb. You know what she understands about what's being said and what might have been confusing to her. And I'm going to tell you that I'm going to say that tomorrow. I'm going to say, really, you expected her to understand without explaining it to her.
You're willing to put out on the street a single mother with a disabled child.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was a long story too, because we went to the people who owned it. That was a long trail. And the very first time they went to court, when they saw she had an attorney, you could see that changed the picture for them. But that day before, he said to the guy, what would it take for this to go away? And the guy says, well, she's got to pay at least $136 or something. Since he says, as my Christmas gift to Barb, I'm going to give you $100. And he paid it, and it was done.
Yeah.
So many people.